Order. Order. Materia today.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The wheels are falling off this government. John Key has started his final term as Prime Minister, actually in the same way that Helen Clark started her third term, very badly indeed. The creeping arrogance, the cockiness of third-termism have taken root in National and have been on full display in recent days in the House. Mr Speaker, first there's dirty politics and the black op smears being run from the Prime Minister's own office, his own staff. And the Prime Minister has been looking increasingly nervy in the last 24 hours as the full extent of his staff's involvement in dirty politics and abuses of power have been laid out for the country to see. That affable smile and wave image is eroding before our eyes, and the public are finally getting a glimpse of the real John Key and the real National Party, and it is not pretty. The Prime Minister is making a fool of himself with his absurd denials and political obfuscations. What kind of Prime Minister uses his security intelligence agencies for political purposes to discredit his opponents? What kind of Prime Minister employs black ops staff in his office to feed dirt to National-aligned bloggers? And most importantly, what kind of Prime Minister refuses to own up and take responsibility for what he has done and set it right again? John Key's refusal to face facts, to take responsibility for the conduct of his own office and his staff, is a response akin to that of a child, a puerile child who's been caught with his hand in the lolly jar. And John Key was like that yesterday, like a child who'd been pulling the wings off flies and thought he'd got away with it. But I will give the Prime Minister some credit. I will give him credit that he has come a long way from the days when he didn't even bother to read the reports that damned his government and his ministers. He did at least read this one, although his comprehension of it would fail any English NCEA exam that you might want to set him. I'm not sure how you can contest the findings of a dispassionate, accurate record of events as contested. That is a piece of logical gymnastics that could only take place on Planet Key, because the reality is the only people contesting the report's findings are John Key and his bestie Cameron Slater. John Key and his bestie Cameron Slater, like this, contesting the reports of the findings of the report. Nobody else in the country, because on Planet Key, black is white, wrong is right, and Cameron Slater is a good guy on Planet Key. And given there are no toilets on Planet Key, as John Key once confessed himself, I do wonder about the stench that must be piling up there with all the tickle. Mr Speaker, of course, the other dirty politics report released yesterday was the investigation into Judith Collins. And clearly the Prime Minister was nervous about the Inspector General's report because he wanted to divert attention away from it. Well, having read the Judith Collins report, she should not feel vindicated by it. It is not a vindication because it was not an investigation. To describe it as a once-over lightly really is an understatement. Key players, including Mark Hodgkin and Kathy Odgers, were not even interviewed. No Facebook messages between Collins and Slater were examined. Only Collins' phone calls to Slater were looked at, not vice versa. And key emails from Cameron Slater were never examined by the judge. The report was short on hard facts, but big on accepting the version of events presented who by Collins herself and Cameron Slater. The smug arrogance displayed by Judith Collins at her press conference yesterday was typical of the arrogance setting in with this government. There is a deteriorating economy. New Zealanders are feeling the pinch at every state, whether it's housing or in electricity prices. Bill English is now softening up the country for failing to maintain the economic goal of running a budget surplus. We know that we can see the Muldoon arrogance in John Key and the Muldoon financial failings in Bill English. Muldoon stalks the land yet again, through this government. Mr Speaker, all this is bad news for New Zealanders, because when a government is mainly thinking about itself, it is not thinking about you. When a government is preoccupied with watching its own back, it is not watching yours. The wheels are falling off this government. Thank you, Mr Speaker.